If you've ever wondered what goes on inside of a water softener and how a water softener actually works, you're in the right spot. Today's video is going to go over exactly how a water softener works and exactly how simple it actually is to soften water. And one of the cool things that we're going to do today, as you can see by our table, is we are going to soften water live right here on the table, just using some basic things from around the house to show you just how simple it is. So stay tuned if you want a fully versed education in how a water softener works. A water softener has tons of resin beads inside the canister. So this is a really old water softener over here, but inside this canister, it is full of these resin beads. These resin beads are very tiny. They're about the size of a grain of sand, maybe even smaller than that. And basically they're a bunch of tiny plastic balls. And those plastic balls have a little bit of a static charge to them, and that's key for how the resin actually works. Basically, as the water is flowing through that resin, it's gonna soften the water, but let's give you a fairly quick example of exactly what the resin's doing when it's softening water. So here we have an example of a resin bead. Now, obviously not to scale, but picture it under a microscope, okay? If we have a resin bead, a soft water in a ready state is going to have a resin bead with a sodium ion attached to that resin bead. As we have a whole canister full of these, we now run our hard water through this canister of resin beads with a sodium ion attached, and what it does, this is a hard water ion, so what happens is as the water is running through the resin bead lets go of the sodium ion and it grabs onto the hard water ion. And this sodium ion will go on and flow through the system. Essentially, that ion exchange that just happened is all of the basics of a water softener. Now, your tank of resin beads all have a hard water ion attached to them. And once it has one ion attached to it, it cannot take any more. We're at a point where we can no longer soften water because the resin beads are all used up, right? If we wash the resin beads with a hard water ion attached to them, the sodium ions from that saltwater mixture will come down and they will get the resin bead to release the hard water ion. It will exchange back to the attaching itself to the sodium ion, and then this hard water ion will flow on through the system and down the drain. This only happens during the regeneration process when the unit is not hooked up to your house water and not flowing to your house water. And so all the pieces of water that are going through it at that point are going down the drain. So basically we're washing hard water ions down the drain during the regeneration process. So now your resin is back into a ready state where it's ready to accept more hard water ions. As water flows through it again, hard water will take the place of the sodium ion, and we've been around this. It's just a cycle. It just keeps going and going and going. So essentially, that's how simple it is to soften water. It gets a little bit more complex when you try to make the machine do all of those functions, do the regeneration and everything else. Before we get into our science experiment, let's take a step back in time. When they were first invented, they did not have the ability to do that regeneration in your home. You would have a tank, a softener similar to this one. This one is an incredibly old softener, probably from like the early 80s, maybe even the 70s. It's possible it's even older than that. This was given to me by another plumber in town, took it out of somebody's house, hadn't worked in years. Basically, this is what you would have many years ago as a softener. Inside it, you have this tank that is full of these resin beads, and you can still see some of the resin beads attached to the dip tube on the control head. This tank would be in a ready state and ready to soften water, and once all of those resin beads had found a piece of hard water to grab onto, a serviceman would come to your home and they would actually unscrew the tank from the control head, and they would screw on a new tank that has been refreshed. Then they would take your old tank off-site to a factory where they would dump all the resin out and they would get it all regenerated and get it all refreshed in the factory. The next week or the next month or whatever your routine was, that serviceman would come back and put on a fresh tank again. Advance a couple of years and they started being able to soften water in your home to where the control head would handle all of the steps of the regeneration process. You advance all the way to where we are today, and water softeners are so sophisticated, they can tell you on your smartphone exactly how many gallons a day you're using, exactly how many gallons of life is left in the softener before it's going to regenerate. It's pretty cool what you can do today, especially when you look at how far we've come. What we have on our table here is, over here we have a canister of hard water. This has not been softened. We're actually going to test it for you here in a second. Here, like we showed you earlier, we have our really cool bowl of resin, and this stuff kind of acts like kinetic sand. It's really fun to kind of stick your hands in and squeeze on it and play around in it. It's kind of neat. If this resin gets spilled on the floor, it is incredibly slippery. We have some resin sitting right here on our table. If I set this on the table and try to push this little bottle of chemical, it's not going anywhere, right? Well, if I set it on the resin and go to push it, it glides across this resin with ease. So you can imagine if you had a big spillage of this resin on the floor, you would be slipping and sliding all over the place. It would look like an old cartoon. It would just be disastrous. So it's like ice level slippery. It's kind of wild. So, and then we also have large salt pellets. This is not like table salt. These pellets are really, really large, about the size of a marshmallow. This is what allows us to create that saltwater brine that will cause the resin to be refreshed. Here we have a pitcher of water that has some salt pellets in the bottom of it. We're going to go ahead and add these salt pellets to it right now. And we're getting this water really salty. That's going to be important here in a minute. Now let's build our softener. This is actually really simple. Here we have a funnel, just like you can find in your home or in a hardware store. And we have a coffee filter. So we're going to drop our coffee filter down into the funnel, just like this. And then we're going to take some of this resin. Now this resin is really old. We got this resin out of this softener. So this resin doesn't do as good as we'd like to soften water, but it'll still work for the purpose of today. So we're going to take some of this resin and we're going to put it in our coffee filter. So now we have a coffee filter full of resin in a funnel. In order to soften water, what we need to do is prepare this resin to soften water. Remember our example with the little circles? We want to get a sodium ion stuck to all of this resin. So to do that, we're simply going to take our salt water and we're going to pour it through this resin. So you can see it's just working right through the resin, and it's going to come right out the bottom side. We'll do a little bit more just to be safe. So essentially, we just regenerated this resin by running salt water over it. We allowed all of the sodium ions in that water to attach itself to each one of the resin beads in here. Again, these are really tiny. There's probably 1 million or so resin beads in there, but we've essentially regenerated the resin. We are going to rinse this out just a little bit. If a water softener didn't go through a rinse cycle, then the resin would have a strong salty taste to it and you would actually taste it in your water. You definitely don't want that. We take water and we run it through the resin just to rinse the salt water out of it. And now we are ready to soften water. Our bowl is empty. Remember, this water is hard. We're going to pour this water through the resin and we are going to end up with a bowl of soft water, and then we're going to test both of them. We're going to be able to show you this water is hard and this water is now soft. So here we go. Pouring our hard water through our resin beads. I'm gonna go ahead and fill our test tube here. This is soft water. We're gonna test the soft first, and then we're gonna show you how hard it started out. We'll just set this in here for now. And now we can run through our water hardness test. So this will be soft water. What we're looking for here is we have our measuring glass full of water. This is just a standard hardness test kit that you can get at any hardware store or pool supply store or anything like that. And then we're gonna put a package of hardness indicator in there. This is what lets it turn colors and let us know that we are indeed hard or soft. This test might not come out as well as we really like it to. And the reason being, this resin is really old. It's probably not doing a very good job of the ion exchange. Now that it's not blue, we've proven that our water it's not completely soft, but with each drop we add of this chemical here, that equates to 1 grain of hardness. And so if we put a drop in here and this water turns blue, then that equates to our water hardness is 1 grain. So here we go, 1 drop, we're gonna swirl it around. You can see it's already going to a nice purple color. It started out kind of pink. We'll go 2 drops just to be sure. And so now we're a really deep purple, okay? So basically any water that's gonna test between like 1 and 3 grains of hardness or less, that's gonna be considered soft water. Let's put one, like we're a nice purple. I don't know if we'll get all the way to a blue again because this resin is so old. We're a light blue. Essentially, we're no longer pink anymore. We are nice and purple. So that is getting us where we want to be. Now, let's dump all this out and let's test the other one here real quick. Let me rinse this out. So now we can show you where our water started out at. We can fill our little measuring beaker here with our hard water. We can put another packet of hardness indicator in there. We'll get a lot stronger colors out of the hard water just because, again, the resin that we were working with, it is very old. I didn't want to crack into my own personal water softener and go dig resin out of it. Let that get mixed up nice and well. So what we're looking at now is 1 drop. We're still not blue. 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll swirl it around. We're starting to kind of change colors, just a tad. 6, 7. We're still kind of not there. 8, 9. Now we're getting to a purple state. 10. So now we're full on blue. So basically, even on our rudimentary level here, we've shown you that we started with water that was about 10 grains of hardness, and we finished with water that was about 3 grains of hardness. If we were using brand spanking new resin, the colors would have been just a little bit more dramatic at the beginning. Again, this resin came out of this prehistoric water softener, so resin does lose its effectiveness and its efficiency over time. Essentially though, we are softening water live here on the table. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little lesson on how a water softener works, the functionality of a softener. I also hope you enjoyed your little history lesson on how softening used to happen before we can regenerate it back in the home. If you liked this video, do us a favor and like the video and subscribe to the channel. Our whole goal is to bring a lot of this information to you guys on a regular basis. If you have any other suggestions for what you want us to record, drop those in the comments. We are very interactive in our comments, and we would love to hear what you guys want to know about and what you want to see, and we'll make a video for it. Again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.